Ever wondered what it takes to run a bootstrapped company of 50 people and to run it successfully for more than 2 years? Well, in today's episode, we are going to find out all about that and more. Keep watching. All right. Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Uno Tumblr Stories. And I have with me today co-founder of Eucloid Data Solutions, Mr. Anuj Gupta.
Great to be
It's really awkward calling people Mr. But then for the purpose of the video, for introducing Anuj to all of you guys, I felt that was the right salutation. Hi Anuj, thank you and welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Yeah.
And I think Utkarsh has not told you that we go back a long way.
Yeah. Yes. We do. So trust me, it is as awkward as it is for you to be called Mr. than me saying Mr. as well. So great. Yeah, thank you for sparing time. I know busy time for you, right? So I think wonderful to have you with us, right? Will be great to start off with an introduction from you, and then we go from there. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Mr. Utkarsh. I'm a co-founder of a boutique consulting org. It's Eucloid Data Solutions.
Mm-hmm.
We started 2.5 years back. I started this with a friend of mine from my undergrad days.
Okay.
I've known him for a long time. His name is Raghavendra.
Uh-huh.
So a journey of more than 25 years with him.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
And before starting Eucloid, I worked with a lot of product companies like Amazon and Adobe.
Mm-hmm.
Did my undergrad from IT Delhi,
Okay.
MBA from ISB Hyderabad.
Right.
I think for me personally, the journey in Eucloid didn't start 2.5 years ago. The way I would look at it is it started, when I graduated.
Mm.
And we'll talk more about it as we go along.
Right.
So I
Right.
think, But that's about me.
Great, super. So let's start with the as I like to call it, the origin story of supervillains and superheroes, right? So when did you guys start Eucloid?
Right. So I think there's a long story and a short story.
Sure.
Right?
We have time.
Yeah.
So आप खुल के बताइए.
So as I said, Raghavendra and I, we
हाँ.
are batchmates from my undergrad days, right? We were in the same department, same hostel, same wing, right?
Okay.
So we know each other inside out.
Right.
And even after IIT, when we started our jobs, right, career, Raghavendra and I were, roommates at that point of time.
Okay.
So during that time, and I'm talking about 2002, 2003,
Okay.
right? During
Okay.
that time, we used to often talk about, hey, can we do something together at some
Okay.
point of time,
Okay.
right? So we used to always brainstorm and discuss
Right.
what can we do, where is the value we can add, right?
Okay. So just a quick one, and again, this is out of curiosity. At that point in time, in IITs, in your environment, right? Was entrepreneurship really a thing, or it's at least for the rest of the world, it's crept in now.
Right.
I just wanted to understand how
It
it was.
not. It was not. I think even at that time, if you look at the top recruiters, back then Infosys and TCS and Wipros, they were like the go-to companies of the world.
Right. Right.
And of course, a lot of other consultants used to come.
Right.
McKinsey's and Deloitte and all of these. They were like top recruiters as well.
Right.
Then CPG companies like Procter and Gamble's and Reckitt Benckiser's, they
Right.
used to always come.
Right.
So typically, most people will not go into entrepreneurship. I think typically either people would go into a MS, abroad, or they would pursue a job. That was the standard path. What was happening during that time, at least the time when we graduated, is that the dot-com crash also happened at the same time. Right? So there was sheen was kind of taken away from entrepreneurship to a certain extent, right? And people started pursuing safe jobs. Right? I think if I look back, when did the real thing in India started? I think it started when Flipkart, raised, billions of dollars from
Right.
Tiger. I think that changed the
Correct.
mindset and the landscape of Indian entrepreneurship completely.
Correct,
And I think
correct,
kudos to Sachin and Binny in terms
Right.
of what they did for that ecosystem as well.
Right. And I'm sure once that happened, obviously it kind of percolates back into the ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And all. Okay, sorry to digress. So yeah, you and Raghavendra go back, and
Right.
you were mentioning.
So I think 2002, 2003, that's we were roommates and we
Right.
had a lot of time in our hands.
Right.
We used to talk about what can we do, what is the next in the career for us, right? But then, along the way, obviously, we kind of went our separate paths. I did MBA from ISB, then went to Adobe. Raghavendra, did his MBA from IIM Lucknow, then went into Cognizant, right? Our paths diverged a bit. But we were always connecting, we were always talking, what's going on and all of those, right?
Right.
So that's a long story, right? So all of that build-up happened over a period of time.
Right.
Then, the short story is that I was with Amazon before Euclid, and during Amazon, of course, COVID, kind of hit all of us.
Right.
And I was at home pretty much for 1 year, right? During the COVID emergency, and so was Raghavendra. And then we started talking again. Said ki, we have some free time on our hands. Why don't we think of doing something together?
Okay.
So we said that, okay, why don't we, at least incorporate a company and think about, what can we do? So we started brainstorming on the offerings, right? One of the things we were clear is that we don't want to start a product company from day one. And the reason for that was because, when you start a product company, it's a very binary kind of situation, right? Either you succeed or you fail.
Right.
There's a middling, ground as well, but that is really not leading anywhere, right? We wanted a company that we could build into a sustainable business. So consulting obviously was a route for us to go.
Got it.
Now the benefit was that Raghavendra and I, we had deep expertise in data and analytics.
Got it.
So we thought that that's how we will start.
That's the space. And give me a little bit of sense on the name. Name bada interesting hai yaar. So I think, how did that come around?
Yeah, so I think this name is a play on, the name of a famous mathematician. His name is Euclid.
Okay.
He was a Greek mathematician, who had a lot of, theories around geometry and, all of those trigonometry.
Right.
And Raghavendra and I were very strong in maths, always, right? And we are engineers at heart. So we wanted to name the company Euclid.
Okay.
Right? After a famous mathematician. Unfortunately, the Euclid.com domain name was taken.
Okay.
It's not surprising.
Right.
But we were like very enamored with that name. So we wanted to give a play on that name.
Got it.
Right? So we tried multiple variations.
Got it.
And Euclid is the one that clicked.
That clicked at that point in time. Very nice. So, and before we kind of, do a deep dive into your journey and how you guys have gone about it, just give us a little bit of sense of what exactly do you guys do?
Right. So we are consulting all very focused on two areas, right? One area is the entire data ecosystem, right?
Okay.
So these days what's happening is that a lot of companies, most companies in fact, are generating vast amounts of data, either offline or online, right? But to manage that data and collecting that data at scale, and building multiple layers of analytics and governance and quality on top of that is not an easy feat, right? So there are solutions in the market, AWS and Databricks, Snowflake, these are obviously there.
Right.
But what is lacking in the market right now is the expertise and the architecture level capabilities to create that entire solution, right?
Got it.
So that is one place we are very strong at.
Got it.
The other place we're very strong at is in the digital e-commerce, right? So these days every brand wants to become the Amazon of their category.
Right.
So we help them in that journey, right?
Got it.
In terms of acquiring customers at scale, making sure that they're able to drive top line growth, making sure that they're able to retain, right? All of those things we do for them.
Got it. Super. And again, this obviously follows on from your experiences, right? I think this is what you guys were doing earlier as well, right? So, but isn't this a crowded space? Just
it is, right? I think if you look at analytics world as a whole, it has been there for a long time. I remember during our when I was in undergrad, there used to be a company called Inductus, which is now EXL,
right?
And they were very strong in analytics. And they were the.
I mean, some brands are awesome, right? Even it just suddenly took me back to so many years just hearing that name. Some brands are awesome. So go ahead.
Then EXL obviously is a big company now, right? And then Mu Sigma, right? Then a lot of other new age competitors like Tridence and Fractal, they've obviously come up, right? I think fundamentally the way I look at it, each company will have its own variation of what they're trying to do. For example, Fractal is going very deep into AI, and they're now going into product space as well, right? And there are very interesting evolutions that can happen, in the spaces you're operating in, right? So at a meta level, yes, analytics is crowded, but it is not commoditized. I think the distinction would be that, right? Unlike, for example, a typical app development kind of company, right? Especially with now, Chat GPT and Copilot coming, it's like getting commoditized to the hilt, right?
Right.
Analytics is not commoditized, right? And I think there is still quite some way for it to become that, to commoditize at a certain level.
Right.
But obviously, it's an evolution as well, and we'll also keep on evolving along.
Got it. And also, do you also think that because it is so people oriented, I mean, like as individuals, you guys will bring your own flavor to analytics, right? If I were to, let's say, start a company of my own in the same space, probably there'll be some sort of flavor that I will bring in. Right. Apart from obviously the basic framework that might be similar, but then the final output will have a very different. Is that typically?
It is. For example, a lot of companies these days, analytics companies are focused on AI, right? And they're focused on machine learning for the right reasons, right? But when we go to the customers, we realize that their problem is actually not on the AI level yet.
Right.
Because AI will come in or machine learning will come in when you aggregate data at scale.
Got it.
And you have good amount of data quality.
Got it.
Those two problems are not solved yet.
Got it.
And our belief is that unless you solve those problems first, you will not get to the machine learning stage.
Got it.
So we focus on that a lot, right? So that is kind of, we're trying to solve the first problem, then graduate to the second problem.
Right.
I think a lot of other companies are taking the other route.
Got it.
And it has worked for them as well.
Got it. Okay. Cool. So I think now taking another step back, right? So I think when you guys decided to obviously start off, right? Then like you said, it was COVID time and you guys were kind of trying to figure out what to do together. Did it ever occur to you at that point in time of starting solo, or were you always gung-ho on bringing in a co-founder and working together with a co-founder?
Right. I think when you are young, right? And
you're still young, yaar.
Thanks for that.
हम लोग एक दूसरे को यंग नहीं बोलेंगे तो कौन बोलेगा?
Something that I keep telling myself every day. But I think when you are younger, let me put it that way, right? There's a lot of there's a lot of belief in yourself, right? I think, and which is the right thing, right? You would think that, hey, I could do these X, Y, Z things, right? As you grow more evolved, right? There's a certain sense of wisdom that comes in, right? Where you say that, hey, you could do all of these things, right? But is your time well spent in doing the things that you're not naturally good at, right? And obviously, working with large companies obviously helps you give that perspective, what you're good at, what you're not good at, right? So I think in my experience, it is always better to have co-founder or co-founders along with you, right? For multiple reasons, right? So one is obviously complementary skills, to the table, right? So that is one. Second is that you have a good amount of sounding board, right? If there's some complex decision that you need to take, you can brainstorm, right? You can do multiple things. That is one. Then the third is simply that emotional connect, right? In the sense that because your goals are aligned, right? You're always working towards a common goal, which means that you can kind of manage your emotions, which is a big part of entrepreneurship journey, right? You can do that relatively easier, right? You talked about, for example, the people aspect of it, right? I think, for example, my co-founder Raghavendra is a lot better at people management than I am, right? I'm good at certain things, he's good at a lot of other things as well, right? So we bring a lot of complementary skills to that table.
Got it. Awesome. So and obviously both of you come from pedigreed backgrounds, right? So there is an IIT thrown in there is ISB, there is IIM and all. तो भैया मुझे ये बात बताओ, आप लोगों ने अभी तक पैसे क्यों नहीं उठाए? And I'm sure you get this question quite a bit. You come with a great network, and I'm sure you would have kind of you could have gone out and raised money, right? But then you've decided to be bootstrapped. You've built this company to 50 plus people. It's been more than 2 years now, and from what at least I'm aware, there are no plans of raising any capital even now as well. So yeah,
I think there are two reasons. Part of it was by design.
Okay.
Because we were a consulting org,
Yeah.
right? We started the company as a consulting org,
Uh-huh.
which meant that we need to kind of just put in our sweat equity, right? And we will kind of get the returns that way,
Right.
So which is good, right? The other way to look at it is that we raised funds, not just from investors. We raised funds from our customers.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
Our customers are in essentially in effect funding us right now.
Right.
I think we will need capital at some point,
Mhm.
right? And my sense is that we will need capital for growth, right? At maybe a scale when we are at least a 300 people, 400 people strong company, right? If you look at a lot of other companies like Axtrias and Credences of the world, right? They also raise capital, right? That was not to kind of fund the operations. That was for growth. And I think at some point when we get to that level, when we are able to bootstrap to a certain level, and we want to really hit an inflection point from there onwards, right? At that point, I think we need capital. The way I look at it, I think this is a maybe 7 to 10 year journey for us, and we are in the third year of journey right now. So maybe in the 5th or 6th year, I think we will start needing that growth capital at that point.
Got it. So, and obviously I've been now obviously speaking to people as part of, my series of videos and all, right? And there's been a lot of discussion around fundraising capital, funding, and, what it takes to kind of, go through that exercise. Now, in your case, right, where you guys are bootstrapped, right? Walk our viewers through that journey, because I don't think we've been able to kind of at least I have not been able to catch hold of someone who's not raised money,
right?
So it's great to kind of will be great to hear that from you,
right? I think when we started when we started 2.5 years back, I think one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that in case it doesn't work out, do we have enough money in the bank to sustain our lifestyle? We all have kids, we have families, right? And we have certain level of expenses, right? We wanted to make sure that we have enough cash in the bank to fund ourselves for 2 years, right? I think that was the starting point when we started Ucloid, right? We said that, hey, do we have enough cash in the bank? And that was a tick mark for us, right? Then what we said is that, okay, given that aspect, let us maybe put some amount of seed money from our own thing, right? So we
to get this started off.
This started off. So I think we put, if I'm not wrong, maybe 3-4 lakhs
each,
each, right? We hired the first employee, even though we didn't have any customer on board with us. Got it. But we felt that we could get some business through our pedigree, through our experience, through our expertise. Right?
Got it.
Then we went into the market. We went and started pitching, right? So one of our, ISB professors, if you remember, Venkatraman, he was from Darden, right? He had that entrepreneurship course. And he used to always talk about the F network.
Right.
In entrepreneurship, you need to lean on the F network.
Right.
Friends, families, and fools. Right? So that's what we did, right? We reached out to our F network, right? A lot of people in our network, right? That we started, telling about that, hey, we are doing this. Can we add value to you?
Right.
And fortunately for us, one of them clicked with us, right? So our first year, right, of operations. Let me start even before that. Our first 3 months of operations, right? We didn't have much business. Right? But then one of
you guys were pitching at that point. You guys would have made a sort of offering deck and started reaching out and talking to people.
Absolutely. So we were doing that day in and day out, right? And then after that, first quarter of our operations, right? At the end of the first quarter, one of our, Raghavan's friends, he reached out and said that, hey, they need a data engineer to help with some data pipelines. It may not be a long-term project, but, can you help out? And, incidentally, we had a data engineer, at that the first employee
right,
was a data engineer. So our hunch was right, that there might be a need for somebody like that.
Right.
So that's how we got started.
Got it.
In the second quarter, we pitched a Fortune 100 org, right? And the other thing that is very prevalent in Silicon Valley, which we inherited, is fake it till you make it. Right? So we went in. They had a very specific problem. We had no idea, how to solve that problem. But we went in. We said we'll solve it for you. Right? But the good part was we understood the industry.
Right.
So we were able to speak in their language and we were able to convince them. Right.
Right.
So we got our first $500,000 project.
Got it.
Right,
Wonderful.
from there.
Okay.
So that's how it started. Right?
That's how
and
it
from
started.
that, from that time onwards, we kept on building, and we kept on going after more customers. And
Got it,
right now
got
we
it.
have 4 enterprise customers, and as you said, 50 members strong.
Right.
team
That
hit
superb, yaar.
that hit that
Superb.
mark, 2 weeks back. So
Superb, yeah, superb. I mean, it's quite an achievement, boss. I mean, there are a lot of people who companies who are not able to get to this scale. So the one thing that I would want to understand, actually, two questions that come out of here. So one is obviously being bootstrapped. How does it work, right? I mean, when you've raised money, obviously, there is a pile of cash which is sitting in your account, and
Right.
there is a cash burn, and those are the standard things that we hear in the startup world. Now in your case, your growth obviously will also be dependent on the money which you are able to kind of generate from clients, and that comes and sits in your cash, right? So how does the thinking change? I mean, in terms of let's say growth or any sort of planning, how, it will be a very different way that you guys will be looking at it, right? Because you have some money that is sitting there, but then that's also again dependent on your delivery as well.
Right. No, I think it does, right? I think being bootstrapped forces you to be more responsible, right? What that means is financially responsible as well, is one part of it. Other aspect is in terms of execution as well, right? I've worked in a couple of startups in my previous experiences, right? And they raised tons of money, right? But because of that, they were doing 100 things, but they were not good at any of them. So the execution, took a hit, right? But here, because that if you don't execute, the money will not come in. So your execution, has to be really spot on. Your delivery has to be really spot on, right? So we really focus a lot on that, right? So I've worked in VC funded startups, and I've worked in and Euclid is a bootstrap startup. Right? I think our execution, capability and delivery is far stronger than my previous experiences. I think that was one, right? Because we need to sustain that day-to-day kind of thing, right? The second one is in terms of being financially responsible, right? I think both Raghavendra and I, we took a deep pay cut, when we started Euclid, right? And even when the first $500,000 project came in, right? We could have chosen to, get higher salaries. We didn't increase it,
Got
right? And the reason for that is because mentally our mindset was that do we need to save money for the rainy day? For example, in case something goes south, right? Then we need to have enough cash in the bank for us to sustain the team, because team building and team development takes a lot of effort and time,
right?
And you can't go back on that. You can't, for example, say that if you don't have a project, we will lay off people. We will never do that, right? Unlike a lot of other startups which you have seen these days, VC funded startups,
right.
There's a level of responsibility and commitment that comes to us, right? Because we are investing in these people and helping them grow their careers,
right?
So that aspect becomes part of that
bootstrap kind of mindset. I read something very interesting on Twitter the other day. Like somebody wrote that the difference between a bootstrapped company and a VC funded company is that in a bootstrapped company you will not find anybody not pulling their weight.
Absolutely.
So it was a very nice way to put it. So you'll find that everybody in a bootstrap company is actually contributing to the growth of the company, right? As opposed to VC, not that VC funded companies have that in abundance, but yes, there is a little bit of flap that comes on your way because you're obviously kind of trying to build for scale and growth.
Absolutely. So just one more point there, right? I think one of the things in bootstrap companies, at least in Euclid, I've seen that because you are financially very conservative, right? Your risk taking ability goes down a bit, right? Instead of going after 10 different areas, you go after maybe 2 areas, right? New areas for growth. But the benefit of that is it forces you to really think hard on where to prioritize, right? And I think that's a good muscle memory or muscle kind of thing for you to develop, right? So that when the company scales up, that culture and that DNA stays with you.
Right.
Are we evaluating the opportunities with with a lot of rigor, for us to kind of go after. For example, we started investing in one more area recently, right? And lot of due diligence went into it. We talked to a bunch of industry experts. We talked to a lot of advisors as well. A lot of our batchmates like yourself, right? We understood that space really well, right? And then we went after that space, right? And again, going back to Venkatraman, he influenced my thinking a lot, right? One of the other sayings was that spend your imagination before you spend your money, right? And that's what we are doing, when we kind of look at new opportunities.
Right.
We really go to a deep level to understand what is the space and what is the opportunity, and then we go after it.
Right. Super. And just rounding out this discussion on this whole initial part of the journey, that first employee, right? How did you get that first employee on board? It would have been just the two of you,
Yeah.
right? And obviously no business, right? So how was it like, right? I
Right.
think.
And I think, to be honest, I think that challenge is there with us even right now. Right? Even the fact that, we are 50 member strong team and we have a good enough brand name, right? We have good presence and people know about us to a certain extent. That challenge is there even right now, right? I think at the starting, right, when nobody knew Euclid, nobody knew us also. Forget Euclid, right? Nobody knew us, right? I think a lot of it boiled down to the personal connect, right? We hired somebody who was from IIT, right? And obviously, we were from the same, so we understood that person, right? And kudos to him for joining us,
Right.
But I think that personal connect helped a lot, right? In the first year of operations, getting people in was very difficult for us, right? And one of the mental models we employed during that time was to hire misfits.
Okay.
People who were kind of not neatly fitting into a category, because of which they were not getting opportunities in the corporate world, right? So, for example, we hired one person, who couldn't get a placement from IIT BHU,
Okay.
because he was down with COVID, right?
Okay.
And then for some reason, right, that kind of shut down his confidence level, right? And he could kind of that impacted his future interviews, right? But then when we interviewed him, right, we knew that and we could make out that he was short on confidence. We told him upfront that, hey, we will not evaluate you on confidence. We'll evaluate you on how will you solve the problems. And obviously, being from a pedigreed institute,
He was able
to nail that.
Right.
We got him,
Right.
So our evaluation criteria was different from what a normal corporate would evaluate people on, right? So I think some of those things helped us to kind of start or bootstrap the company, right, from a organizational level, right?
Right.
But even right now, I think the pitch has changed now for us. When you talk to people and try to get them in the company, right? We know that there is a brand name that is there, right? And people have come to us also to, right? So our pitch is now, how can we help you grow, right? And a lot of people have come to us and they've joined us. Incidentally, 2 people joined us recently, from some of the biggest startups and established companies in the world, right?
Wow. Okay.
And they've come to us because they wanted a growth path that they were not getting in those companies.
Yeah. Oh, great. I think hiring as it is very difficult, because you as founders obviously you have the vision, you've seen the dream, you know what you're trying to build, but then getting others to enlist in the same dream, right, is a little bit tough, right? And more so when you're bootstrapped. Because typically VC funded companies, you will obviously kind of talk about the money that they have raised and what are the funds that are backing us and so on and so forth, right? So, right, great. Okay. Now coming to the business building part of it, right? Now obviously 2 things that we've now established by now, right? With all the interviews and stories that we have heard, nothing goes as per plan, right? So I think, right? So and I'm sure that will be the case with you guys as well, right? But what has been the journey been like, right? I mean, it's been 2 years now, 2.5 years now. You've grown, and we could wager and say that there is a little bit of success that you guys have seen, right? What has been the journey like?
I think overall the journey for us has been very good, and I would say that we have been lucky as well in a lot of respect. For a Fortune 100 organization to onboard a relatively unknown like us, right? I think how it happened, I don't know, right? But I think all the fortune and all the stars came along, at the same time to kind of make that happen somehow, right? Mostly, I think if I look back, what we have built and the capabilities we have developed over time, I think it's been a good journey. Obviously, there have been a lot of ups and downs along the way, right? Because we are bootstrapped, we depend, growth for us is more difficult, right? So any lost project or opportunity or customer is obviously it pinches us a lot, right? And so incidentally this year obviously the overall economy is not as great,
slow,
right? So our growth has stalled a bit. There was a churn in some projects, right? And that kind of really hits you in the gut, right? lot of days filled with anxiety.
Right.
Lot of days, sleepless nights.
Right.
All of those aspects are there.
Right.
But at the end of the day, and one of the things I always tell the wider team also is that while we are very focused on the micro, don't forget the macro, right? Which is that, hey, from 2.5 years back, where we are, where we were, and where we are right now, right? So I think that's a useful benchmark to look at, right? I think along the way, a lot of people issues have happened as well, right? Lot of pain, right? A lot of discomfort and pain as a co-founder, right? And I was reading somewhere, I think it was Naval Ravikant or some, somebody like that, right? He said that, the startups usually stall because of emotional maturity of their founders, right? And I think personally for me, in hindsight, it's a good journey, but a journey filled with pain because, you are pushed to do things that you're not naturally good at.
Right.
You are pushed to, develop your mindset and evolve your mindset. You're pushed to, go out of your comfort zone. And that is a painful journey. Right? Even though it works out for you, you become a better person, but it's a painful journey.
It's a painful journey, no doubt. And I think also, one of the changes that you and, Raghavendra also would have experienced is that obviously when you are, two changes actually. One is when you're in a company, you're in a large company, then typically what happens is that आपको पता है salary आ रही है, everything is kind of going, it's not our headache types and all, project comes, not comes and all of that. It'll probably come into picture around performance reviews and everything, right? That's one change that suddenly now kind of shifts, right? That hey, we are responsible for kind of getting projects and all. The second thing which I wanted to which also you would have observed is when you're doing the same thing within a larger ecosystem versus doing the same thing for your own setup, right? That would have been a big difference, right? So for example, if you would have been part of, let's say, Amazon and gone to your Fortune 100 client and said that, hey, we will do this for you, you're looked at very differently vis-a-vis going as a representative of Euclid, and it's the exact same thing.
Right.
It's the same it's the same skill set. How did that kind of work out, right? So was that something that you experienced?
Yes, it was frightening. It was really frightening because ultimately, as you I think referred to it, the buck stops with you.
Right.
So the amount of ownership and the amount of responsibility that you have, that is like at a different level altogether. In a bigger company, you know that if this initiative doesn't work out, then there are plenty of other initiatives that you can do and contribute to, right? So for example, in Amazon, one of the things and which is which is the culture that we want to develop in Euclid as well, is that a project failure is not an individual failure, right? And I think that's something that Amazon would try out multiple things, right? But a lot of things will not succeed. Doesn't mean that the individual has failed. It just means that project has failed, right? And they will go out do other interesting things, right? But when we started out, especially, right? A failure of Euclid meant a personal failure as well, right? So which means that you need to own up to it, and you need to own up to the consequences of whatever you're doing to a large extent, right? So I think that's a big difference, right? And then of course as a team grows, there is that responsibility of handing out salaries to the wider team, right? And making sure that we develop their careers as well, right? So that kind of that responsibility is on you at a personal level, right? I think that's a big difference.
But isn't that like, I mean, how have you guys dealt with that sort of change? So essentially what you just said, the bouquet of things that you have to look at kind of has suddenly become like huge, right, compared to where it was, right? How did you guys manage that? How have you personally managed that sort of change?
I think having a co-founder really helps, right? I think that is one of the things I will advise anybody, right? Is to have a co-founder whom you can trust and rely on, right? And I think both Raghavendra and I think we have been lucky that way. Our values, right? The values that we live by, they match to a large extent, right? And we have complementary skill set, and we are looking to each other for support, right? And we give each other support and all of those aspects, right? So that pressure and that aspect, obviously, you can manage that with a lot better with a co-founder, right? But the other aspect is in terms of process, right? I think, and I was reading this, if you remember in the one of the recent IPL matches, Rahane, hit a century.
Right.
And, after that, he was kind of being interviewed, you were being dropped from the Indian team and how did that impact you, right?
Yes.
He said that you have to trust the process, right? If you trust the process, things will happen, right? So that's what we are trying to do when we are building that memory, we are building that muscle in Euclid right now, is to be very process driven. Now what that means is, we are not bureaucratic. What that means is we are disciplined to, if we decide on doing something, we go after that thing, right? And we keep on doing it, right? For example, organization culture is something that is still a work in progress. We are developing it, we are improving it, right? And we'll keep on doing it. But it's a process-based approach we are following right now. There are 10 things that we have identified, we'll keep on doing that. In business development, there's a process that we are following, right? In people development, there's a set of tenets we are following to make sure that people develop and contribute, right?
Right.
So that's how we are trying to manage the entire thing, right? If you're following a particular mental model in the process, I think things kind of straighten out for you or get streamlined for you. Otherwise, we're just throwing darts, right? And that is the last thing you want to do as an entrepreneur.
Interesting. And as you've obviously gone along in your journey, right? If you are to identify, say, top 3 things that you feel that have kind of really led to some sort of success for you guys, what would you say those?
Right. I think we will not call ourselves a success yet. I think it's still quite a long way for us to go, right? But I would say that what has worked for us, right? One aspect is obviously the people aspect. One aspect is obviously the process aspect, right? That we are trying to be disciplined and we do that, right? Second aspect, and all get to Radhavendra for that, right? He has brought a lot of people centricity in the organization, right? I think we focus on people development, learning and development, right? Certifications and coaching a lot, right? I think we'll keep on doing that. We'll keep on getting better at it. I think that is the second part of it. And the third part of it is that we have cultivated a set of advisors around us. Again, these people are just people who want to help us out without any expectations of returns or any equity and anything, right? They just want to be part of the journey, like yourself, for example, right? And for us, it's always good to have a set of good advisors around you whom we can kind of bounce off ideas off, right? And then they will help you out. They will give you their unique perspective, and that really helps you.
So I think process, people, and advisors, right?
Yeah.
So these are the top 3 things that you feel kind of have helped. And I think if you were to even ask me honestly, the biggest asset, especially in the business that you guys in, is the kind of people, the quality of people. And I've got a flavor of the quality of people that you guys have, and I think it's tremendous, guys. I think the whole a bootstrapped company able to attract this kind of talent, right? I think is a credit to you guys, and I think it's not everybody is not able to do that, right? So I think it's wonderful that ways. And right now, like you mentioned, 50 people, and are you in different geographies as well, or are you guys only in India?
So we are into 2 geographies right now. Obviously, India is one of them. The other one is US. We are trying to get into the Middle Eastern geography right now as we speak. Right? I think Middle Eastern geography is there's a lot of growth happening. UAE obviously was historically the beacon of growth, but Saudi is now becoming a big market, and we are trying to go after that and investigating that. It's still early for us, but that would be another very interesting area that we want to expand into.
Got it. And when you're looking for, like, now obviously when you head into the Middle East, right, then it'll be like a startup within your startup, right? Now when you're hiring somebody, and this is an advice for young entrepreneurs as well, right? So I think if you could just help us out over here. If you're hiring somebody for in this early stages, what should they look for in that particular person?
I think you have to just look for an outlier in some aspect, right? Now that outlier could be in terms of problem solving. That outlier could be in terms of commitment. Somebody just willing to work hard, keep their head down. Or that outlier could be in terms of a skill set that you don't have, right? At least that's a mental model, because in the initial stages, right, you don't know what will work, what will not work, right? So you need to kind of, do something different, right? And for that you need people who can help you do something different. So having that outlier mindset, and looking for people who are different, right? In some aspect, or bringing the unique value in some aspect. I think that is very important, right?
Got it.
And in the initial phases, I think this tied very closely with the misfits aspect that I just talked about, right? Those misfits, we could see that they were not fitting in the regular 9 to 5 kind of corporate job, right?
Right.
But they were outliers. For example, I know one person, we hired one person almost 1.5 years back.
Okay.
Now he came from a pedigreed institute,
Right.
went into IAS, right? Couldn't clear IAS, right? He spent, I think, 3-4 years there,
Achha.
right?
Okay.
But there was so much hunger in him to make up for lost time, and we could see that hunger and passion, right?
Okay.
So then we hired him on the spot.
Got it. So the outlier,
Right.
function is outlier attitude is one thing that you
Right.
will look for. Anything else?
Yeah, I think just outlier is one. I think the other aspect is in terms of attitude, right? That can-do, positive mindset. I
Right.
think it's a force multiplier.
Right,
At the end of the day, right?
Right. But how do you assess these things? So is it you guys obviously won't be using any psychometric tools or anything of that sort? It's basically your judgment and so is there like a hiring process that you follow? It goes through multiple levels, or is it too many levels?
A
Or
lot of that is gut instinct, to be honest.
Ha, ha,
At least
ha.
in the initial phases,
Ha.
we take the call, right? And we invest that in that call, right?
Right.
If you remember, we hired a content guy.
Ha.
It was like 6 months back, right? And everybody liked him,
Huh.
but I said no, there's something off about him,
Ha,
right?
ha,
But still I said disagreed and committed and said that hey,
Huh.
let's hire him, right? And that person didn't turn out to be
Right,
for us,
right.
So a lot of it is judgment call
Hmm.
and gut instinct, right?
Right.
But the important thing is that in case it is not working out for you,
Ha.
you find an exit path for that person.
Right,
I think that is very important, right?
Ha.
It is not working out for us doesn't mean that it is not going to work out for anybody else out there.
Right.
So we try to be as employee centric as possible,
Right.
and provide that power to that person. Right? I
Right.
think that is important.
Right. Great. Coming to the the personal side of it, right? Now, obviously, as an entrepreneur, the journey is very taxing, right? And more so, if you're one of the co-founders, and again, like you mentioned, bootstrapped and so on and so forth, right? So, what have been your takeaways on that front? How do you, for example, manage stress? I remember we were discussing earlier around your fitness, physical fitness and everything, right? So walk us through that.
Right. I think stress is an invariable part of any entrepreneur's life. I think any corporate life for that matter. It's not going to be easy, right? I think the only thing in entrepreneurship is that you are more responsible for the outcomes, right? I think that adds to that level of stress, right? I think 2-3 things, and I would not say that I've perfected the art of managing stress, right? But I think 2-3 things I try to do regularly, right? So one is obviously physical fitness is a big part of it, right? If you're physically fit, you can take stress for a longer amount of time. So you need to invest in your physical fitness, running or yoga or
Right.
gymming, whatever works for you,
Right.
right? I think that is one aspect, right? Second aspect is I think having a good spouse and family. I think somebody whom you can lean on. It doesn't mean that it's like a one-way relationship. It's like
Right.
it works both ways, but having a good spouse or family always
Right.
helps, right?
A good sort of support system,
Support
so to
system,
speak,
I
right?
think that always helps. And of course, co-founders, we talked about it, so
Right.
I'll not repeat that again.
Right.
And the fourth one I think is develop or cultivate a hobby, right? For me, I've been very passionate about music.
Okay.
Right? I learned tabla for couple of years.
Okay.
Right. One of my undergrad professors, from IT, right, Professor Kiran Seth.
Huh.
He's been a huge influence on me. He's the founder of Spick Making,
Okay.
which is India's largest,
Okay.
voluntary organization that
Right.
promotes Indian classical music.
Right.
Huge influence on me, right?
Yeah.
I started listening to classical music from undergrad days.
Acha.
Right?
Okay.
I still keenly follow it. I listen to it regularly.
Right.
All of those things helps, right? And then last thing for me, I've been doing meditation for past maybe like 30 years.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
that also helps in
Okay.
doing a lot of that.
Okay.
But I think it's a working progress.
And tell me something, how do you find time, yeah? That's I think most important, right? Because with, like you just discussed, so many demands on your time.
Right.
So how do you?
I think we have to be more organized, and it's again something that I need to get better at. I think we all can get better at.
Right.
I've not mastered it. I've not
Right.
perfected it.
Hmm.
But for example, these days I'm very calendar driven, right? You know, if somebody is not in my calendar, you know, there's some ad hoc, you know, thing, I will say no to it.
Okay.
Right? Because if you are in what kills you is not time commitment. What kills you is a surprise. Right? And that is the thing I actively try to avoid, which is that, hey, don't surprise me with anything, right? If you want some time from me, put it in the calendar. Put it in a free slot and I'll be there, you know, for that particular ask. Right? So I try to get better at it. I think there are still cases where, you know, sometimes these things still come. But but I think if you're able to do that, then it becomes a lot better for you.
And just a point to added point to that. So what are your views on, you know, that whole debate going on around multitasking versus kind of, you know, being focused and being multitasked and all, right? So there are two schools of thought that have now suddenly sprung up saying that multitasking is useless, right? It's best to kind of, you know, focus on something, finish it and then move on to the next one. So what are your thoughts on that?
Right. I think multitasking or the demand of multitasking, you can't get away from it, right? Irrespective of whether you're a founder or whether you are, you know, working as an employee in a corporate job or even, you know, whatever, right? That will always happen. I think the nature of the job is like that, right? I think what is important is to find a way to focus on one activity for some time and then be able to context switch.
Okay.
You know, and that's a skill set that I think all of us should need to, you know, get better at. All of us need to learn. And I'm not saying that I'm the best at it, right? I'm still a work in progress, right? But the more you get better at it, if you're able to context switch from one thing to another thing, right? In a short span of time, right? I think that helps, right? One of the things that has really worked for me is that after an intense meeting, I take a 5-minute break. I do breathing exercise just to kind of balance out, right? And there are a lot of breathing exercises available on the, you know, and you can look it up.
And
right?
you do it like on your desk itself, or you walk
on the desk. You know, for example, one of the things I do is that, and there's a very famous two exercises, right? One is take long breath, pause for 5 seconds,
right?
Exhale,
and then
pause for 5 seconds, then, you know, do that for 2 minutes, right?
Right.
Other one is take long breath, short breath. Right? So some of these things help you kind of, you know, get back into that mindset.
Right.
But I think context switching is important. What you need to do is to make sure that you work on the activity for a long enough time, given the constraints that you're operating in, right? I think.
And would you advise like yoga or to, you know, young entrepreneurs, yoga or any other form of physical activity?
I think I would advise it because entrepreneurship is like a minimum 7 to 10 year journey, in my opinion, right? I think Flipkart founders, they had like a 10-year journey.
Correct.
So it's going to be that long journey, right? And you need to endure that journey, right? If you're physically fit, you can do things lot better, right? So I think
And कभी-कभी ऐसा दिमाग में आता है कि यार ये क्यों कर रहा हूँ यार मैं तो ऐसा, you know, do you get those thoughts at times?
I think money wise, yes, right? You know, I think my salary is not at the level at what it was previously, right? I think that aspect is there, right? It's not a binary question in my opinion. ऐसा नहीं है कि, you know, क्यों कर रहा हूँ या वो करना चाहिए था, ये अच्छा है, right? I think it's a range of emotions, right? On some aspects, you feel lot better, right? For example, the fact that you're able to create this company, right? And that gives you a sense of accomplishment, right? Financially, you may not be as well off, you know, as you were before, right? I think that's the other aspect of it, right? Sometimes, you know, when you're a tough day, whenever there's a churn, you know, for example, we had a couple of churns this year, right? That hits you in the gut, that makes you question your assumptions, right? So that's part of the journey, and you have to learn to deal with it. I think as long as your North Star is clear, which is that, hey, you want to do this in the next 5 years, and you're working on that goal, that makes it a bit easier.
Excellent. Any mistakes that you did that you would want to share and you know, advise our young entrepreneurs? Multiple.
I think you know, one of the biggest you know, things that I was not good at, and I've, you know, made a fair amount of mistakes at my level, is you know, how to disagree and how to deal with disagreements.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And there's a certain level of trust you need to have on the person, you know, whom you're disagreeing with, or have that person is disagreeing with you, right? But if that is sorted, right, you have to, give that disagreement due consideration, right? And I've not done that enough.
Okay.
Right? I think still need to get a lot better in that, right? But that disagreement, how do you handle it? How do you learn from it? Are you kind of disagreeing to convince somebody, or are you disagreeing to learn something? Right? I think there's a very difference in the way you approach it.
Right.
If I disagree to convince somebody, you will never win that battle. And I've made that mistake, far too many times. Then I don't care to admit. Right? But if you disagree to learn something, I think you will get better. Company will get better.
So that's mistake.
That's mistake number one. Right? Second mistake is I think pure ego. Right? From a pedigreed background, all of these, right? You will think that you are God's gift to mankind.
कि मुझे पता है यार, मुझे मत बताओ यार. So I think
and the sooner entrepreneurs get out of that mindset, and learn and appreciate the viewpoints of the wider team, right? And hear them, right? And get that diverse viewpoint and then formulate a strategy, right? I think the better it is, right? I think so. Art of listening is very important. Right. I think that's the second one. Right? And the third mistake, I think, is lack of empathy.
Okay.
Right. I think and incidentally, all these things that I talked about, no? So one is the disagreement. Second is the hearing, and third is empathy.
Right.
All of these are people issues. They are not technical issues.
Right.
And then technically, people are good.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the kind of things that I made multiple mistakes in, and I still do.
Okay.
Right? But it's a work in progress.
No, that's wonderful to hear. I think one of the common threads that I have now seen in all the Uno Tumblr stories that I'm doing. There is a lot of there's a lot of gratitude that I see, in all of you, right? And it's not easy achieving what you guys have achieved. So there's a lot of gratitude that I see. The second thing that I see is a lot of humility and self-awareness. So I think that is something which I think probably entrepreneurship really changes people into that mode. And I'm sure 2.5 years back you would not have had this realization.
Right.
You only had this realization in the last
Absolutely.
2.5 years.
Absolutely.
When you've kind of walked this journey. Great, super. So where does what is the vision? So where does Eucloid go from here? What is the thought process that you have?
Right. I think there are a lot of unsolved problems in the data space, and data is all we will ever do, right? I think we're really focused on that. A lot of unsolved problems in the data space that still, need to be solved, right? I'll give you one example, right? Obviously, ChatGPT, and we have talked about it multiple times.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to. Good that you brought it up. I noted it, but then
ChatGPT is kind of is both an excitement and a scary thing for everybody.
Right.
I think.
Do you think it's a threat for your business?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Right? And the reason for that is the way I look at it. ChatGPT is an assistant to what you are doing, right? For example, if you remember, a lot of times people used to have, at least in our schools, right? We used to have log tables, right? And we used to do these long computations through log tables.
Correct.
And people used to have slide rules and all of those things, right?
Assisted sort of,
That was a thing.
Yeah.
But then, calculators came along, Excels came along. Did that replace jobs? Absolutely not. It created more jobs.
Right.
I think it's going to be the same thing with ChatGPT. What the difference this time being, the pace of evolution is very fast, right? So, calculators and Excel, it had a very gradual pace of adoption, right? But now that internet is available to 4 billion people in the world out there, right? Everybody has access to ChatGPT. That makes things very different. So the pace of change we have to adapt to is going to be very fast. But I think it's good for us in the longer term, right? I think there are broader questions about bias and security and all of those, which I'm sure the good folks at Microsoft and Google, they will figure it out, right?
Right.
But for the wider population in general, I think having that capability, to serve as your advisor in some sense, right? I think that is always a good thing to have.
Right. Super.
So I think in data world, coming back to your question, a lot of unsolved problems are there, right? I think, and that's what keeps me excited at night, right? It is that, hey, what else can you do? A lot of multiple. My heart breaks when you have to prioritize one area over other area because of the things, right? Because of financial constraints. But I think a lot of things that we can do.
Right,
That's
right,
it.
right. And finally, coming to the to the family side of things, right? So, from what I am aware, your wife is also an entrepreneur, right? So, having two entrepreneurs under one roof, advisable or not? So,
I think it helps.
It
Actually,
helps.
it helps,
Hmm.
right? Because you're going through a certain emotion, right?
Hmm.
And that your spouse would be going through that emotion at certain other time.
Right,
It helps you build that empathy,
Huh.
right? And it overall helps.
Right.
That you're in the same boat, you're kind of doing the same things, right?
Right.
So you kind of get better as a team, so to
Right,
say. So
right.
I think it helps.
It
personally,
helps.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've and you've two daughters, right?
Right.
So how do they understand that mom and dad are entrepreneurs?
They do, and I think it's tough for them,
Huh.
right? But I think it's also helping them to be more independent.
Okay.
Right. But it's not again a 0-1 situation, right?
Right. Huh.
There is a downside to it. There's an upside to it. I
Right.
think you have to balance the both of these, right?
Balance
I would
the-
like to spend more time with them. I would like to be more active participant in their
Right.
in their hobbies or education, right?
Right.
Which I can't do right now.
Right. But are you like as an entrepreneur and as obviously as a father, are you trying to find time to actively do that?
We do. I mean,
huh.
that effort is always there,
Right.
but you could always do more. If there are
huh.
not enough competing kind of requirements on your time.
On
right?
your time,
you could
right.
do that, but yeah.
Great, super, yeah, super. And any last comments, words for our young entrepreneurs, right? If I were to ask you, put you on the spot and say, would you do it all over again? Bootstrap journey all over again?
I think there's a time and place for everything. If I was a 20-year-old, and I started Euclid, right, and maybe got to the same level,
Huh.
and then maybe in late 30s or mid 30s, I would try to do it again.
Right.
But at the stage of life I am in right now, I think this is it.
Okay. And typically, this obviously kind of journey, like you said, 7-8 year journey, right? So you're already 3 years into that. So,
Right.
Wishing you and the Euclid team a lot of success in the days to come, right?
Thank you
So much for your time. I
Absolutely.
think it was a pleasure having you here. I think, it's rare to come across, profitable, bootstrapped founders who've kind of, built this up from scratch and taken it up to, 50 and obviously, like he mentioned, maybe up to 300, hopefully before, the first external round of funding comes in, right? All the best to you for your journey.
Thank you so much.
And, thank you once again, guys, for watching in. I hope you guys enjoyed. And, stay tuned for a lot more. And like always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.